Did you notice that sometimes the hardest part is not being creative but getting started? If so, this is for you. Today I'm using one of my creative templates. Uh, I have some instructions here, not because I think every journal should follow a template, but because sometimes our minds need a place to begin. We're overthinking every decision, having a small step to follow can make all the difference. The first instruction is simply to draw a frame. That's it, nothing complicated. And I think that's why it works. Perfectionism often convinces us that every decision has to be the perfect one, but creativity usually begins with very ordinary first steps. I started with a pencil because my brain again is overthinking. The following instruction is just a frame. Now I'm going over with pen. Once I started, continuing feels much better. That's something that I notice over and over again. Starting is where the resistance lives. Now I'm gonna start with the tick line in the corner. It's a tiny detail, but really helps to see this coming together. Then add the title. At this point, the page isn't blank anymore, and somehow that changes everything. Now it's time to add these layers of paper. Here are some instructions to choose different textures and shapes and follow. And this is probably the longest part of the process. And choosing some pieces around, I will try some different combinations. And as you can see here, just cutting some small pieces, it will help. I usually go with neutral colors because I know that there is really not much to lose with them. They usually combine with everything. And I will change my mind several times before I complete this. But here you see me start to cut in pieces and start to look in my head. I started to get a picture of how I want this to look like. In the past, changing my mind made me a little bit frustrated, but the older I get, I realize that changing my mind actually is part of the creative process. It's not that I'm not creative enough. Now I see it a little bit differently. Now I actually see experimenting as the first sign of creation. It's not something that you're doing wrong, it's quite the opposite. It's something that you're doing right, where you get out of the outline, out of the system, out of the regular process. You are creating your own reality, your new alternative process. Here, for instance, I'm taking advantage of the template to go for the smaller pieces to cut and have the guide. But there are several days when I really don't even think about the template. I'm feeling creative. Once I start, I don't look at any template anymore. I think this is just the start. I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to make the right choice that we forget that creativity is supposed to involve exploring. Every person, every artist, every creative person, engineers, scientists, creative minds really try things that didn't work before they find something. So if you're creating something new, if you're going out of the regular process, you're doing the right thing. These templates and this process is only a fuel for you to begin. And it really is not a process that is gonna come out in your mind quite immediately. I think that action comes first, and the creative confidence is something that we build as we experiment. We build it with every decision, every finished page, every time we choose to continue instead of giving up. And of course, we also create that with every mistake because we're teaching ourselves that we can trust our creativity, but we will also make mistakes. And those mistakes are part of the process, and it's important that we learn that. For instance, when I started journaling, I didn't know that vellum will not work with liquid glue. I learned that by making the mistake of using liquid glue with vellum. And then, of course, going forward, I never made that mistake again. So as I work my own templates for my personal use, I added some additional tips and reminders to myself. And I wanted to create this as a tool to help me start. Because sometimes I think that the biggest obstacle is not the lack of ideas, it's not the lack of creativity. It is actually the conversation happening inside our own heads. And once we quiet that conversation enough to begin, the ideas usually follow. And once we decided where everything goes, I would add this main piece. It's a big commitment for me. I don't think it is quite perfect, but I think that I explored enough in this page to move forward with this decision, and I'm happy with how it looks like. I'm also adding this as a small little sticker because these tiny details are some of my favorite parts, and the template also suggests 2 additional tiny items. And so again, it's just another gentle prompt, not a rule. So I just adding those additional stickers, and so instead of adding just the 2 that we saw in the template, I'm adding actually 3. And of course I double check always whether the sticker is gonna fit in place, and this one looks like it's gonna fit. And the goal again is not to copy the template perfectly. The goal is to keep creating. Everything here is gonna be just a suggestion, but of course the decisions are always on your hands. And I already added some lines on the left side, but they suggested 2 little lines here, which I'm gonna follow because I think that it balances the page really good. So here I'm adding these 2 lines at the bottom. There's little finishing details that I really like because they help bring the page together. And then I'm also gonna add these final stickers here in the top of the bottom of the left page. As you can see, I have like these beautiful stickers here. This one looks like a postage stamp, which I think it's perfect for this page. I'm also gonna go to the suggested by the template and add 2 additional stickers at the bottom. Because I think that's what creativity, confidence really looks like. It's not waiting until you feel fearless or waiting until the idea feels perfect. It's just giving yourself enough support to begin. Sometimes you're gonna need the template, some other times you're not. But once you start moving, it's so much easier to keep going. And here's the space for me to write now, and I'm gonna be back. Here's the finished page. I hope it reminds you that sometimes you just need a place to start. Thank you so much for watching.